Hey everyone, welcome to tutorial number 3. Today we'll be talking about the basics of VS Code. So to get started, open up VS Code. And then what you're going to do is come over to the remote SSH extension and connect to a host. I'm going to connect the current window to a host. And it doesn't really matter what host you connect to, just find one that's convenient and connect. So we'll let that kind of do its thing for a second here. Perfect. And so now you can see that we're on Z3. And let's take a look at my home directory here. I actually have quite a few different items here. And we're going to be talking about some of the basics of how to look at code and use code today in VS Code. And to do that, I wanted to have some sort of concrete example that we could look at. And so I created a repository with just like a bare bones, really simple neural network that we could kind of play around with. And so before we go any further, let's just clone that repository into my home directory so that we can work with it. So I'm going to open up my browser here and go to GitHub. And the repository is just called Simple Neural Net. And I'll make sure to post a link to this in the description, but I'm just going to copy this so that I can clone it. And then I'm going to say git clone and then the URL. And now when we look at our directory, you can see the Simple Neural Net directory, which is awesome. Okay, so the first thing that we want to talk about is the code command. And the code command, its main purpose is to open things. So it can open files and it can open directories as workspaces. So let's just look at an example of this. So I could say like code key, for example. And when I do this, it opens it up in the editor. And this is the public key that we copied to this node previously in our last tutorial. So I'm going to close that down. Let's do another one. Let's say code output.txt. You can see that it opens it right up here in this editor. And it has all the perks of a modern editor. So regular, just like copy and paste and different ways to select things and all sorts of cool keyboard shortcuts. So I find this a lot easier to use than Vim, for example, to just make quick edits to text files. It's really nice. So aside from just opening files, you can also create files this way. So for example, I could say code test.txt and oh, it looks like I already had created this. Let's create another one. So we'll say code test2.txt. And this is a brand new file. And so I can just like write something in here. And you'll notice this little circle right here. That means that I haven't saved it yet. So just do Control-C for Windows or Linux, or you can do Command-C. Sorry, not Command-C. I mean Command-S to save it, or Control-S. And so we'll save this file. Perfect. And let's make sure that it really works. So I can say like cat test2.txt. And sure enough, there's the text that we added. So code is really great for opening files and it's great for creating files. And another thing that it can do is open a directory as a workplace. And this is important because it basically allows us to use a lot of these different options over here on the side. So you'll notice right now in the File Explorer, it's not showing us any files. And it will only show us files if we open up a directory as a workplace. Same thing for like find and replace. Unless we have a workplace open, it doesn't work as well. And if our workplace happens to be a Git repository, then it kind of is integrated with this source control tab over here as well. So there's a lot of benefits to opening directories at work as workplaces. Just to kind of reiterate my point, notice that we can't see any files right here, right now, but then I'm going to say code simple neural net, and you can do this as well. And when you do this, it'll open up a new window and open this directory as a workplace. So we'll give it a second to do that. And one of the things that you'll notice is now when we click on this File Explorer, you'll see all these different files just at a glance, super easily. And you can click on them to just bring them up in the editor. So that's super nice to just have that easy access right there. One of the downsides though, is you'll notice that it opened up a new window. And so you can really easily just start having a bunch of different windows that pop up. So what we can do instead, we can say code-r and then some kind of directory that we want to open as a workplace. And the -r stands for reuse. So we're reusing our current window instead of opening a new one. And when we do this, you can see that the whole screen refreshes and we opened it up. I already have a file open. So that's another thing, is that it'll kind of like save state. If you've ever opened that directory as a workplace, it'll kind of remember what files you had open when you left it, which is nice. And let's click on this file explorer now, and here are all of our files at a glance. So let's start taking a look at these. So if we open the data directory, there's nothing really in there except for a git ignore. Same thing with weights, there's just a git ignore. We have a git ignore for the entire project. We have an environment.yml. So this creates a conda environment. This file right here is just our neural network model. Pretty simple. We have this README file. Notice that it's not formatted as a README file. So what we can do is we can right click on this and we can say open preview. And then it formats it all nicely. This is a pretty simple README, but I think it would be especially nice to format it when you have a lot of content in there. Let's look at test.py now. So essentially this is just testing a model after you've kind of already trained it. It's looking for a checkpoint file. It's loading the test data. It's creating the neural network. And then it just does like 50 tests essentially. If we look at train.py, this is a little bit of a bigger file. I won't go into all the details right now, but essentially it's just training our neural network. And then utils.py are just kind of some like miscellaneous functions that are nice for our other files. So we can, again, we can click on this little icon to kind of open or close it. We can also do Control B to close and open. So that's kind of nice. And so, yeah, now we have our workspace, which is great. And I guess one of the things that we should immediately notice here is that VS Code does a great job of syntax highlighting. So it recognizes automatically that this is a Python file, and it highlights all the syntax in such a way that it stands out really nicely. One of the things that it's not doing right now, however, is any linting. And what I mean by that, linting just means like telling you if there's an error or kind of giving you certain warnings. And so, for example, if I just like type the word def, it highlighted it correctly, but there's no like squiggles to tell me that this is an error, that it's an incorrect definition statement for a function. So in order to kind of get that functionality, what we need to do is install the Python extension. So click on the extensions tab over here and just type Python. And we're just going to click on this right here. And it says install an SSH Z3. So one of the things that you do have to do is for every host, you're going to have to download this extension. You can't just download it once. So yeah, we're going to install on this particular host. We'll just do that. And sometimes this takes a second. And I think it actually installed already. So one of the things that you will notice now is if we like come back here, all of these import statements are highlighted now. And so if we didn't have something, for example, we said like import matplotlib. Oh, I guess we do have matplotlib. I don't know if I can think of a good package that we don't have right now. Maybe SciPy. Yeah, so we don't have this package right now installed. And so you can see that it warns us that we don't have it, which is nice. And then there's other linting things too, right? Like if I just say def, now it's warning me that this is an incorrect statement. So that's really nice. Along with just like highlighting errors, it can also give us suggestions. So if I say like torch dot, and if I do like control space loads all the suggestions, which is really cool. And as I kind of type it, it updates those suggestions. So yeah, so those are just some of the nice things that you get when you install the Python extension. Not to mention that it also lets us debug things. And we'll talk more about that in the next tutorial. Sweet. So at this point, we can also talk about choosing our Python interpreter. So you can see that there's this new thing down here. We can click on this, and there's all sorts of different Python interpreters that we can choose from. For example, if I just click on this, this is just like the vanilla Python that is installed on the system. And you'll notice that instantly all of these import statements get highlighted in yellow saying that we don't have Torch. So usually what I do is I create a Conda environment just specifically for that project. And often I'll like save that Conda environment in an environment.yml file so that it's really easy to then build it. So the way you would do that is say Conda env create file, and then you would say environment.yml. And yeah, so you can go about doing that yourself. I've actually already created the environment. And the reason I did that is it takes a while for it to actually install the packages. So it will take about like 20 to 25 minutes to actually get everything installed. So if you need to right now, just like pause the video, run this line of code so that you have the correct Conda environment, and then kind of resume from there. But luckily for us, I already have that environment built. If I, for example, say Conda env list, this will show me all of my environments. And sure enough, I have the nnnet environment, which is the one that we want. So I'm going to say Conda activate nnnet. And what I can also do is kind of swap out my interpreter for that one. So yeah, I want to make sure that I'm in this nnnet Conda environment and I'm using that as my interpreter. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice that all of these imports go back to being happy. They're not giving us any warnings anymore. Sweet. So yeah, I guess a few other things that we can kind of talk about are how to kind of navigate between files. And so for example, I can search for things in my file. So if I say like Control F, I can search for something. Let's say I want to find model. And so these are kind of showing me the two places in this file where model is. And then what I can do is I can hold Control and kind of highlight different words, and it will take me to where that code points. So if I like highlight model and then I click on it, it will take me to the model file, which is kind of cool. And I can even do that for code that I didn't write. So for example, if I want to like, let's kind of inspect this linear class. So I would just do Control and then click on that, and it'll open up the code for that linear class. So this is really nice. Yeah. Anytime you want to kind of navigate to source code, you just do hold Control and then highlight something and click on it, and it'll instantly take you there. And then you already saw how you can search something with like Control F. You can also replace something in a file with Control H. So for example, we could rename parser. Let's do that. So we're going to say Control H parser, and we're going to say like arg parser. And I can replace all, or I can replace them one by one. So I'm just going to click replace all. And often when you replace all, it'll like create some errors, right? So this was a case when I didn't want that to happen, but still a handy tool nonetheless. So I'm going to do Control Z to undo that. So that's find and replace. And you can also do find and replace here. The difference is that this is across the entire workplace. So across all the files. So if I say like model here, it says 4 results in 2 files. Or if I say like net, 24 results in 5 files. So yeah, really powerful search function right here. And really powerful if you do a replacing there too. It'll replace it across all the files, which is really nice. Sweet. So those are most of the basics. I think now that we have our environment up and running, let's just try running our code. So to do this, I'm just going to say Python, and then the name of the file that we probably want to run first is train.py. So I'm going to say Python train.py. And you'll notice the first thing that it's going to do is download all of the images for Fashion MNIST. While it's doing that, I can explain a little bit more about this particular model. So this is just an image classifier. and it's taking Fashion MNIST images and training on that. So Fashion MNIST, they're like 25 by 25 pixel images, or might be 32 by 32. They're really small though, and they're just clothing items. And so you have like shirts and shoes and those sorts of things. And so we're trying to train a classifier so that when we give it one of these images, it can predict what type of clothing item it is. And so now you can see that we started running. Here's epic 1, and it's printing out the loss and the accuracy. The accuracy is actually pretty good. It's already at 82 after 1 epic. And we're at 83. And you'll notice after like downloading the data, this file right here is now filled with all sorts of stuff. So we'll let this run. I think it only runs for 5 epics. Perfect. And then you can see that it saved the PyTorch neural network state to this file. And so sure enough, when we open this directory now, you can see checkpoint.pth. So it ended up with 85% accuracy, which is pretty good. And let's say Python tests.py. And this will just run a bunch of tests. So you can kind of see here, the prediction was sandal and the actual was sandal. Kind of just shows predicted and actual. And the model did really, really well. And like when it messed up, so it like predicted a shirt, but it was actually a t-shirt. So still like a pretty close guess. That's amazing. If for whatever reason you weren't able to get this to work, maybe your GPU is already running. You can always check that with NVIDIA-SMI. And this will kind of show you your GPU usage. You want to look at these 2 numbers right here. This shows you what is running at that current time. And so if there is something running, like someone's already running something on the GPU, you can also say like Python test.py, and then say device CPU. And this should work. Oh, whoops. I think I did test. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do train. Yeah, this should work. It's using the CPU, which is going to be quite a bit slower, but if the GPUs are already being used, that's all you can do. Perfect. So yeah, hopefully this helped as an introduction to some of the VS Code basics. In our next tutorial, we'll talk about debugging in Python. And that is one of the most powerful features that VS Code has. So I'm excited to see you there. All right, thanks for watching.